1918. Germany lies in ruins. Bankrupt. Crushed by the Treaty of Versailles. 6 million unemployed. 30% unemployment rate. Banks collapsing. National income down 40%. This isn't just poverty, it's economic death. Fast forward 20 years, 1939. That same Germany now commands the most powerful military machine Europe has ever seen. Tanks rolling off assembly lines by the thousands. Fighter planes blackening the skies. Industrial output so massive it overwhelms the continent. Britain didn't see it coming. France didn't see it coming. The world was blindsided. So here's the question that haunts every historian. How? How does a nation on its knees suddenly produce enough steel, oil, rubber, and machinery to wage total war? Where did the money come from? The answer is financial sorcery, and it changed everything. The hidden engine, the trick nobody saw. Here is the question that reveals the deception. Yes, the Autobahn was enormous. Yes, the public works were massive. Yes, the unemployment crisis was solved. But building highways does not explain what happened next. Roads and schools do not spontaneously generate tanks and fighter planes and artillery and ammunition and the largest military force Europe had ever seen. So where did it come from? How did Germany rearm so completely, so quickly, so secretly that the Treaty of Versailles, which explicitly forbade German rearmament, was violated on a scale that should have been impossible to hide? The answer lies in the second engine, the hidden one. The one running beneath the surface while the people built roads and the world watched and applauded. While German citizens poured concrete for the Autobahn, another industry, invisible to foreign observers, invisible even to most Germans, was producing something entirely different. Not infrastructure, not civilian goods, weapons, tanks, artillery, aircraft, submarines, ammunition by the millions. A military arsenal that would shock the world when it was finally revealed. But here is the impossible question. Where did the money come from? The public works projects alone were draining resources. Military production on this scale would require unimaginable sums. Sums that would show up in budgets. Sums that would trigger alarms in London and Paris. Sums that Germany simply did not have. Unless you were a wizard who understood how to make money appear from nothing. How to spend billions without anyone noticing. How to build an army in the shadows while the world watched you build roads in the light. The answer to that question would change the fate of Europe, would enable the most destructive war in human history. It was called the MEFO Bill, and it was economic sorcery, the black magic. MEFO and the invisible money. When Hitler became Führer, he appointed a man named Hjalmar Schacht as president of the Reichsbank, Germany's central bank. Schacht was brilliant, a financial wizard in his own right, perhaps the best economist in Germany, a man who understood the invisible architecture of money better than almost anyone alive. And Hitler gave him a secret mission, a mission that would test every ounce of his financial genius, find a way to rearm Germany, in secret, without triggering hyperinflation, without violating the Treaty of Versailles in any detectable way, without anyone, anywhere, noticing that Germany was preparing for war. It was an impossible task, a puzzle with no solution. Germany had no money. Printing money would cause inflation, and the memory of hyperinflation from just a decade earlier still haunted every German. That nightmare could not be repeated, and the Treaty of Versailles explicitly forbade German rearmament. If Britain or France discovered what Germany was doing, they would intervene immediately, militarily if necessary. The consequences would be catastrophic, so they needed money they did not have. They could not print it, and even if they found it, they absolutely could not let anyone know they were spending it on weapons. They needed to spend billions, invisibly, and Schacht, brilliant as he was, found a way. A financial sleight of hand so clever, so audacious, that would fool the world's best economists for years. It was called the MEFO Bill, and it was pure financial wizardry, the invisible currency, how MEFO worked. Let us pause for a moment to understand what a bill of exchange is, because this is where the magic happens. Imagine you need to buy supplies from a company, but you do not have cash right now, so you give them a promissory note. A piece of paper that says you will pay then a specific amount by a specific date. That is a bill of exchange, an IOU with a deadline. Most businesses do not like accepting bills because if the company that issued it goes bankrupt, you are left with worthless paper. You gave real goods. You received a promise. If that promise breaks, you lose everything. So the creditworthiness of the issuer matters enormously. Nobody accepts IOUs from unreliable people. And here is where Schacht's genius, his dark genius, came in. He created a company, a paper company, about them. It was officially called the Metallurgical Research Corporation, but everyone called it MEFO, an abbreviation of the German name Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft. It existed only on paper. It had no factories, no employees, no real operations. It was a ghost, a Zell, a financial fiction, and this ghost company would become the invisible engine of German rearmament. The mechanism, money from shadows. Here is how the trick worked. How Hitler armed Germany while the world watched and saw nothing. The government would order military equipment from private companies. Tanks, planes, weapons, artillery, everything an army needs. The companies would build the equipment. Real factories, real workers, real production. But instead of sending the bill to the government, they sent it to MEFO, to the ghost company. And MEFO would pay them, not with cash, with a bill, a promissory note, a piece of paper that said MEFO would pay the full amount plus interest by a specific future date, usually 5 years. Now here is the critical question. The question that reveals how the wizard fooled everyone. Why would anyone accept this? MEFO was a ghost company. It had no assets, no revenue, no real existence. Why would a weapons manufacturer? Why would a steel company? Why would anyone trust a piece of paper from a phantom? The answer was simple and terrifying, and it was the key to the entire trick. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, guaranteed every MEFO bill. The government itself, the full faith and credit of the German state, stood behind them. As long as Germany did not collapse, MEFO bills were as good as gold. Better than gold, actually, because they paid interest, 2% interest, guaranteed by the government. So MEFO bills became currency, not official currency, shadow currency, invisible money that did not appear in any budget, that did not show up in government accounts, that foreign observers monitoring German finances could not see. But it was real, completely real. Companies accepted them. Companies traded them. A tank manufacturer would use MEFO bills to buy steel. The steel company would use those same bills to buy coal. The coal mine would use them to buy equipment. The bills circulated through the German economy like money, because they were money, just invisible money. The beautiful, terrible trick. Here is the genius of it, the dark brilliance that makes Hitler's economic wizardry so horrifying. None of this appeared in the government's books. The government had not paid for anything. The government had merely placed orders. MEFO paid the bills. MEFO, which was guaranteed by the government, but which was technically not the government. So officially, Germany's military spending showed no increase. No red flags, no alarm bells. British and French economists monitoring German finances saw nothing suspicious. A nation rebuilding infrastructure, unemployment dropping, but military spending within treaty limits. Nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, billions of marks worth of MEFO bills were flooding the German economy, funding tank factories, airplane manufacturers, weapons production, submarine construction, everything necessary to wage the largest war in history. Germany was printing money without printing money, creating purchasing power out of thin air, fueling a massive rearmament program that, on paper, to anyone watching from outside, did not exist. It was financial alchemy, economic sorcery, the greatest magic trick of the 20th century, and it worked spectacularly. By 1936, just 3 years into Hitler's rule, Germany had secretly rearmed to a degree that shocked the world when it was finally revealed. Unemployment had dropped from 30% to under 1%. Millions of jobs materialized. Factories hummed around the clock. Germany's economy roared back to life. Foreign observers were amazed. Some were envious. How did Hitler do it? How did he solve unemployment so quickly? What was his secret? They were asking the wrong questions. They should have been asking, where are all these workers working? What are all these factories producing? Where's the money coming from? But by the time they asked those questions, it was too late. The wizard had already prepared his war, and the world had watched him do it without seeing a thing. The time bomb, debt that must be paid. But every magic trick has a cost. Every illusion has a flaw. And Hitler's economic wizardry, brilliant as it was, had a fundamental, inescapable problem. MEFO bills were debts. They had maturity dates. They accrued interest. Eventually, someone would have to pay them with real money, with actual resources, with something tangible. And Schacht knew this. He designed the system with an exit strategy. MEFO bills issued in 1934 would mature in 1939. 5 years. Schacht planned for the economy to recover by then, for military spending to decrease, for the civilian economy to grow and take over. Then Germany would pay off the bills normally, withdraw the excess liquidity from circulation, and transition to a sustainable peacetime economy. To Schacht, MEFO was emergency medicine, temporary, dangerous if used too long, but necessary to revive a dying economy. It was never meant to be permanent. It was never meant to finance unlimited military expansion. It was a bridge from collapse to stability, from despair to hope. But Hitler had a different plan, a plan Schacht did not fully understand until it was too late. To Hitler, rearmament was not a means to an end. It was the end. He was not building an economy. He was building a war machine. And war machines have only one purpose, only one destination. War. The conflict between the economist and the dictator was inevitable, between the man who understood sustainability and the man who understood only domination.